Welcome to the Reasons to Reason podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sal Galati. This is the show that's going to talk about all the things we're not supposed to: God, religion, and politics. So strap in, prepare to get offended, and maybe, just maybe, our nation can learn how to reason again. Welcome to Reasons to Reason. I'm your host, Sal Galati. I got some ideas coming up in the next few weeks where we're going to have some conversations with some folks about different ideas. Again, the show is just about getting people talking about stuff that matter and digging a little bit deeper than superficial. So today's episode is going to hopefully be fun. I'm calling it Signs Everywhere a Sign. I don't know if you guys remember that song, but the chorus of that song goes, Signs everywhere a sign, blocking out the scenery, breaking my mind. Do this, don't do that, can't you read the sign? Check it out. It's a good little tune. These signs, what I'm proposing here is that, they're creeds of religion. We talked in the last episode about the atheistic religion. Certain things people never really associate with religion, but they actually are religion. They fit all the hallmarks of religion. And actually what people associate with the Bible is actually not religion. That's people that are believing in historical events that have happened. They have evidence to believe them. You don't have to agree with them. But religion is something where you're not really allowed to question. It's just this is the way it is. We talked about scientism, we talked about gender fluidity, Lysenko through history. The last episode was actually pretty neat, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. Today, we're going to go through the signs in people's yard and kind of look at them and break them down. And I've proposed my own sign and kind of gets behind the issues, right? And it kind of unpacks what the signs are actually saying, which, again, a lot of them associate with atheistic religious views. And I think even though their intention is to be good and they sound good on the surface, and the saying goes, the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions. Actually, when you look behind them, there are some elements of them that actually cause conflict and issue. And I'm hoping my sign actually proposes some building blocks that a society could build off of. And I don't know, hopefully you enjoy it, right? So here's an example of a sign. Hate has no home here. So you see that out there. What is that saying? That like other homes have hate in them? Or if people disagree with me, that means it's because of hate. No, you need to talk to the person you disagree with. I would find in a vast majority of cases, it's not a hate issue. It's a different perspective. It's kind of the things we're trying to unpack here. I made that example of people disagreeing about abortion, but getting to the root of it. If someone believes in God or someone doesn't believe in God, that's going to affect your conclusion. It doesn't mean one person's hateful or another is hateful because they disagree on a topic. So it's, again, laziness. It's to encourage people not to talk, say hate has no home here. Now, in and of itself, though, it's not even true. When you say hate has no home here, do you hate murder? Do you hate crime? Do you hate injustice? I would imagine you would say yes. We had this example of this ex-Marine that stepped up in a situation where a lot of people wouldn't have, even though it was the right thing, and they wanted to make it about race, but it wasn't about race. He stepped up and stopped the person that was threatening to kill people. And you could say, oh, he wasn't going to kill people, but how do you possibly know that? There's people murdered on the subway all the time. There's mentally ill people that are out that shouldn't be, that they should be getting care in an institution. The society is left to deal with them because our politicians are corrupt and immoral. So instead of politicians going, hey, why is this guy out and about? Maybe we should have him being treated, threatening people, scaring people. They villainize the person that stepped up and stopped something terrible from happening. And that behavior should be encouraged, not stymied by the guy being worried that he'd be sued. And I don't know what he thought in the moment. He just did what was right. I'm sure he knew that was going to come his way. But I guarantee you, I can't guarantee, but I'm pretty confident he'd wake up in the morning and say, I want to kill someone today. He does not a murderer. So that's an example of okay, hate has no home here, but we need to hate certain things. God hates certain things. There's Proverbs 8:13. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. Pride and arrogance and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. So God hates things. Pride is one of those things. We're going to talk about that later. Pride keeps us from seeing the truth. There's a quote from Mark Twain that says, it's easier to lie to someone than convince them they've been lied to. And what he's getting at is pride. People don't want to even admit they've been duped. And because of that, people continue to argue and hold on to things. Even if they know it's not true, their pride blinds them from seeing the truth, where they rather be wrong and not admit it than be right and have to tuck their tail between their legs for a little bit. It's just human nature. It's terrible. But God hates pride because it keeps you from seeing the truth, and God says he is the truth, right? This is how this all relates. So here's another sign, all are welcome sign. That's kind of projecting, well, if the neighbor to the left or the neighbor to the right or the building to the left doesn't have this sign, that means they're racist or they're sexist or they're not allowing someone in based on anything other than the content of their character, which is not true. And there's a very small percentage of the population that actually feels that you could judge people based on things other than the content of their character, right? Now, I feel like we've gone backward in our society. Politicians and leaders have antagonized the society to look at everything through the lens of race. I mean, I'll just introduce it now. There's one race. Biblically, there's one race. It's the human race. The colors and the skin colors and the eye shapes and the cheekbones and all that stuff, those are just variations of the one couple we all descended from. Like a dog has variations throughout all the dogs, but it's still a dog. Structurally, it's a dog. This is the idea of like there is evolution. We change, but we didn't change kinds. Micro versus macro evolution. Who would want to lie to us and say that there's more than one race? Entities that want us to argue with each other. So the all are welcome sign is, again, projecting something. What was Jesus' view? Jesus ate with the prostitutes. He ate with the lepers. He ate with the tax collectors. He didn't really get along well with the elites, right? He was down with the blue collar, the broken. He had his saying where, the doctor can only come to heal the sick, can't heal the healthy. And when he was saying that, he wasn't saying... The implication is we're all sick. It's just the people that admit they're sick can actually get help. But some of us confuse ourselves into thinking we don't need any help. And, in that case, the doctor can't help you. A little anecdotal story of this idea of like all are welcome. Here, a couple years ago, I spoke up at the library board. And we'll do a whole nother episode on the library and how all that works. But in this particular show, I'm just going to spoke up about some of the books that are making their way into the kids section that are obviously inappropriate. As time's gone on, Sal's been proven to be right. But nonetheless, at the time, people wanted to make it seem like I was saying something I wasn't. But again, that's not the point. We did secure a meeting with the head of the library board and the head of the library for a meeting. And we were there. I was there with actually another mom that we didn't agree on many things, but we agreed on this. And this is this idea too, like, it's not two buckets. Not everyone like, oh, you're in this bucket and you're in this bucket, so I know everything you think. That's the degrading, childish way of looking at it. Here on this show, we reason. We talk things through. There's diversity of thought, and everyone is a human being made in the image of God and could have a variety of perspectives on a variety of issues. But I'm in this meeting, this all are welcome thing came up, implying that I was suggesting certain people were welcome in the library, which wasn't the case at all. But I entertain things like I do, and let's work it out. So I said, okay, all are welcome here. Are pedophiles welcome? Now there was a pause, and the head of the library had the good sense to say, no, we wouldn't want pedophiles in the library. Okay, glad. Who knows 10 years from now where that argument's going to go. I could easily see, if we continue to devolve, that there'll be pedophile Wednesdays at the library. But at this time, she still had the good sense to say that. The other woman, though, tragically couldn't even say that. No, she couldn't acknowledge that. Now, this person was maligning me on social media, saying that I was saying things I wasn't saying, calling me this or that. And again, I don't take it personally. It's not my problem. I'm just pointing it out that this is the religion. You look at the situation, you know what makes sense, but religiously you got this in your head that all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome. And now I can't put my tail between my legs and acknowledge that, well, not all are welcome. So you see how the religion blinds us? So let's get to the big sign, right? Here's the big sign we see in people's yards. In this house, we believe Black Lives Matter, no human is illegal, love is love, women's rights are human rights, science is real. Now I'm going to give you my sign, and then it's going to try to go back and forth here between the two signs and breaking them apart here. My sign is life is sacred, biology is real, sex is not love, our rights come from God, not the government, and truth is not relative. So let's start to reason here. So Black Lives Matter, of course they do. My argument is that they only matter in the biblical worldview. We all only matter in the biblical worldview when we're made in the image of God. So I brought up to you in a prior episode, people that subscribe to Darwinian evolution and believe and see everything through that, which ultimately led to materialism, what ultimately led to Marxism. But the title of his book is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. The implication being certain races evolved beyond others, okay? And we talked about how Hitler took this and ran with it and thought that he would make humans stronger by getting rid of what he deemed to be the weaker races, the weaker people. So you see how tragic this all is. Again, I'm not saying this is true. I believe it's obviously false, but to the person that subscribes to this, where does the matter come from? Where do any of our worth come from? So our lives are only meaningful if they're sacred because they're made in the image of God, which brings it to my point. Life is sacred. We don't need to distinguish between this race and that race. And again, I've pointed out, we're all one race. People need to think about that again. Different pigmentation, but we're all one race. It's racist to think that there's many races. And the Darwinian evolutionists, what they come to is that different races are actually in different levels of progression and evolution. It's disgusting. But again, I don't think the people that put that in their sign are thinking about this. It's just a mantra. They're not thinking is the point. And I'm encouraging people to think again. So another bullet on the sign, no human is illegal. So the border is a whole nother topic and discussion. Let's leave it at this. The only people in that thing that are making any sense are the people coming across the border, my opinion. They're doing the logical thing. Our politicians, our leaders are not. They're all, most of them are involved in it and want it for a variety of reasons, whether it be cheap labor, which hurts the American citizen. It leads to unemployment. It leads to lack of a career that could sustain a family, as we're seeing. It leads to alcoholism and depression and suicide and all these other costs that no one's even contemplating. There's so much ramifications of these irresponsible policies that really only benefit a few people up top and everyone else catch the hindmost. But when you put this in your yard, you're projecting to people that it's immoral to call someone illegal. Now, the legality is a matter of their citizenship. It's not their worth. It's not a value claim. Again, I argue that people are made in the image of God. That's where their value derives from. So they're not less valuable, but they're not citizens. And there needs to be a distinguishment there. To be a citizen of a nation, you're part of a contract. You're part of a deal. And when the non-citizens are treated better than the citizens, you can see how society breaks down. And there's a lack of trust in the government and willingness to listen to the government, and things just break down. It's not a revolutionary concept, what I'm saying. So when people that are citizens of this nation are left to fend for themselves, let's look at the those floods that went through in the Carolinas. You know, those are people that have paid into a system their entire life through taxes, promise that when something goes wrong, the government will be there to help them, and the government's nowhere there to be found. And meanwhile, the money is helping people who aren't citizens of the nation. And look, compassion is everything. Again, I have no problem with the people that are coming here. They're doing the same thing. If you set up the incentives in a bad way, that's what's going to happen. People want them to come. There's a lot of money being made by these people coming and going through a really scary, tragic, dangerous journey to make it here. I'm not judging them. I'm judging the people that are profiting off of that. And then confusing the citizens, us, to argue with ourselves about it. It's not a thing. It's a thing. We should let them in. We shouldn't let them in. Of course we want immigration. I brought that up in another show, the first show, where if we set it up appropriately, what we have here is a great situation where we can encourage the most hardworking, industrious, brightest people in the world to come here and benefit our society. That's what the setup is. But if you just let everyone in and not keeping track of who they are, whether or not they're dangerous, whether or not they're going to murder someone. I mean, we've had these terrible situations happen. And again, it goes back to life is sacred. We need to cherish life again in this nation. So like, a little off topic, but like the death penalty. This is something where people have a misunderstanding of it. The death penalty is compassionate. The death penalty is set up to discourage it so much that there's no murder. No one's getting excited about putting to death someone who committed a murder. It's to prevent murder from happening in the first place. So one of the basic things that the government set up for is to protect life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And they're failing. This is an example of politics is to governance as religion is to God. The politics screws up what the government's supposed to do. The government should be there to establish these things. The situation that happened on the subway that we brought up earlier should never even have happened. That guy should never, both of those people were let down by the government, because the person that was mentally ill should have been getting care, and the guy that just went through the ringer to do what was right should never have been put in that situation to have to do that. His life is never going to be the same because of how he's been maligned. But then even if he wasn't maligned, taking someone's life, I I've been in that situation, thank God, but I can't imagine how that sticks with you, how that changes you. So let's have some understanding here. Let's think these things through. We're going to do a show I have in mind called Politics to New Mafia. And because like all these things going down there, when you look at how the mafia operates, it's the same business. There's a lot of money being made on the border and a lot of people being exploited. And that's what we should be talking about. Not just saying no human is illegal and try to put that to bed. Let's understand what's going on there and let's have real compassion for people. So women's rights are human rights. That's the next bullet. And I mean, here we got a little unpacking to do. So if the argument is women are human and have rights granted by their creator, then of course I agree. Yes, women have rights, just like every human being has rights. But the same people that have this sign in their yard can't even tell me what a woman is half the time. So again, the religion breaks down. We're screaming about women's rights, but we don't even acknowledge what's a woman. Now, when we talk about women's rights, let's get to the point. It's usually about abortion. But let's talk about some of the other rights. Do women have rights to be able to change in a locker room without a man there? Or participate in a sport without a man abusing them? Or a woman boxer not getting beaten by another man? It's insanity. Okay, but those rights are seemingly not that important. And I'm not coming up with anything new here, right? It's just unpacking these things we just throw out. Here's an anecdotal story. Had a woman, we disagree on a few things, but she said, I should have been more upset when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed. And I said, I don't know how else to, it was just silly to me. I don't even know where that came from. But anyway, I go, why? And she said, I wasn't like I was celebrating when she passed, I said, why? And she said, well, my daughter has many of the rights she has because of her. And I said, and this woman went to law school. I said, my daughter's rights come from God. And this is the fallacy. This is why, I think the Bible should be studied, not from a religious standpoint, from a foundational standpoint in law school and in school in general. You have to have a tangible understanding of it. Again, most of our legal system stems out of it and other systems that have stemmed out of the Bible and the law in the Bible. Is it crazy to study Hammurabi's code versus the law of Moses, see where they agree, disagree, what we can take, what we could leave behind? Just study them, have an understanding. But fundamentally, our rights don't come from Ruth Bader Ginsburg or the Supreme Court. They come from God. So the abortion issue, we talked about it in the last topic. And again, that's the right that I think people are talking about. We talked about in a prior episode, this thing is all confused, right? So like we talked about the procedure where if a woman has a miscarriage and you extract what remains to eliminate the risk of infection, that's not on the table. No one's trying to take away that care, right? So to conflate that with late-term abortion, for example, is not, it's just irresponsible. It's politics. It's garbage. It doesn't help us understand what's going on. But again, there's nuance, and we're not to impose our will on anyone. No one wants to take away anyone's rights, but what is a right? And we have to have that conversation and think about it logically. Find that area where like 80% of the people agree. And I want to actually propose a thought exercise for the people who are Christians who listen to this. And I don't agree with how a lot of people handle this, going and insulting people that are making that decision to get an abortion. It's not biblical. It's not loving. But here's a thought exercise. If God wanted to stop all abortions today, he could. But he gives us free will. This is the point. So rather than demonize people that are making this choice, and a lot of people are in difficult situations and they make a difficult choice, and the judgment, I love, one of the things I love from when I've actually studied the Bible for myself, Jesus says, don't judge, because by the measure you judge, so also you'll be judged. And that's convicting. I mean, if the world would just take that away. One thing about when you judge someone is that you can't plead ignorance, that you know it's wrong. And think of the things that we condemn people for that we've participated in ourselves. Just a thought exercise. But again, we live in this country, and the women's rights are human rights. Again, where do the rights come from? So that's where my point is. Our rights come from God, not the government. We're made in the image of God. And anyone who denies God and claims they have rights, they're confused. And it's an incoherent claim they're making. So people trying to claim rights that only exist if God exists, and then they want to throw away God. You see how it doesn't make any sense? Science is real. That's the next bullet point. Actually, I just saw a clip. It was from a ways back. I mean, they looked very young. So obviously Bob Kennedy Jr. is in the news for Health and Human Services, which I want to put it out there. I was texting people before he would ever endorse Trump that Trump should call him up and offer him that job. I swear, because that's a role where I think he could do a lot of good work and exposing some of the corruption. And again, he's mislabeled as far as what he believes, and I don't necessarily just because I like the guy and this item I got to agree with him on everything. That's not the point. Let's question these things. I saw a video though. It was from Scarborough show, MSNBC. It was interviewing Bob Kennedy. I don't know how long ago it was, but they were just talking about like, wow, like we should probably look into not necessarily like any particular vaccine was dangerous, but the amount of vaccines given to the kids very quickly could be causing this autism that we're seeing in the population. And I don't know if it is or not, but if you don't study it, you'll never know. This is an idea of like proof. People want proof. Well, prove it, prove it, prove it. Well, if you don't look and you just fight anyone trying to peer in and see what's going on, of course you can't prove it. We'll talk about proof in another episode, proof and evidence and how those terms are used and what really they are. But science is the study of things and understanding the world around us. It's not static. It does not explain how everything that is here got here. It simply explains what we perceive. And so science has been set up as a religion where it could explain everything. And if the science can't tackle it, you can't even know if something's true or not. You know, we talked about this in the last episode, scientism. Scientism is the religion that says science can solve any dilemma if given enough time. How we got here, meaning of life, etc. Like, let me give you an example. We talked about some of these theories of evolution, how we got here and evolved from nothing. And it's like, the answer is that they'll mock the believer that says, oh, you know, God created. That's why we see design everywhere. They'll mock that position. But when you get them and ask them, like, well, how did it all start? Well, you know, just we got to give it more time. We got to find out. And then you talk about, well, there's been billions and billions and billions of years, and through all that variation and time and things could happen and this and happen, it's a scapegoat. I mean, time is the new God of the gaps. It's not the believers that believe in God using a God. I'm not saying God is throwing down lightning, right? I understand where lightning comes from, but you're using time to kind of fill in your gaps by just saying, well, there was a lot of time. We gave that example. You put all the ingredients to a cake on a table. I don't care how much time you have. You haven't even explained how the ingredients got there. But all the time in the world, they're not going to assemble themselves. You need an agent acting on them. So the same people that have science is real, I mean, my bullet point is biology is real. So when it comes to the sexes, wouldn't you know it, the Bible affirms what science tells us, that God created them male and female. You know, it's a simple thing in the beginning of Genesis. God created them male and female. Who would have thought thousands of years later we'd be arguing about that fact? So again, a lot of these things, I think there's a sinister element behind them that's trying to undermine what God said, right? And we're being demoralized, really. We're going to talk about that in another episode. Like we're being conditioned and taught like you can't trust your own senses and your own, and even a reality around you, that everything's up for grabs and there is no truth. And that's another bullet point, like truth is relative. Truth is not relative. There is truth. We could disagree upon it, but there's certain things that are true. You know, one of the things about science is a lot of people think this was like the Enlightenment period where we threw God away and then we got to do all this science. That's far from the truth. The truth of the matter is the scientific revolution happened as a result of people who believed in God. And they understood that if God created, we could understand it. It's created so it has order. There's experiments that could be repeatable. It's not a chaotic thing that came together. How can something of chaos have laws and order? Where did the laws come from? A lawgiver. One thing to think about, if our mind is a product of this creation and it came upon by random chance, why would you ever trust it? Would you trust any computer that wasn't designed to output certain results? Or it was just chaotically put together, like just by accident it got assembled? Obviously that wouldn't even happen. We know that. I mean, as we even ask these questions, we know these things wouldn't happen. But will you just trust the output? So if your mind was just random series of processes and time, why do we trust anything coming out of it? So now we're going to get to a real meaty one, which is actually the first one I noticed on the sign and then started going through all of them. So love is love. First off, you never define a word by itself. What's a refrigerator? It's a refrigerator. We're taught not to do that. So what's going on here? Okay, so we got this word for love in English. In the Greek, there's 4 words, and I'm going to go through them. Eros, which is romantic love. Storge, which is protective love. It's like the love that a parent would have for a child. Philia, which is brotherly love. This is the love between friends. platonic love, I guess is what you call it, and agape love, which is selfless love, a love that is unconditional. So obviously, love is not love. Just looking at that, right? That word can mean different things. And so I have an example with my daughter. We're walking down the street, and I want her to see these things and think about them and reason through them. And she's such a bright kid. It's been so cool getting to know her and watch her grow up and process this stuff. I asked her to look at the sign and say, "What do you think about that?" And she goes, "I don't know." I go, "Well, does Dad love Mom?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Do I love you?" "Yeah." "Do I love your uncle?" "Yeah." "Are all those the same?" And she quickly said no. I mean, she knew immediately. And that's the point, right? Love is not all the same. And so we talked about like God's love and God, how God defined love, where Jesus said, "Love is laying down your life for a brother." And the truth of the Bible is, the claim is that God is love. And logically, this makes sense. Love's one of these immaterial things, right, that science can't really describe. Science can say, oh, evolutionarily speaking, we have this instinct to love. But if you look at the world and see how people treat each other, it doesn't reconcile, right? First you say survival of the fittest, but then you say we're to love each other. They just don't resonate. They don't connect. If Darwinian evolution is true, I should steal from my neighbor if I could get away with it. I should take his wife if I could get away with it. Like act like animals. But that's not what people do. We have this sense that that's not right because we're made in the image of God. Even if we don't act upon it all the time, we know it's wrong, right? We have a sense. Really what I think, the sign is trying to say is sex is love. Whoever I choose to have sex with, it's love. Again, I'm not making a judgment on any sexual orientation other than one. Pedophilia would be one. And at least, again, there's actually a drive. I don't know if you want to acknowledge it or not, but there's a drive towards normalizing that behavior. And that mustn't happen. We can't normalize that behavior, but certainly the storge love, the protective love between a child and the erotic love, every relationship could have one, two, three. I think a marriage has all four of those in a well-operating marriage, but certain relationships don't lend their hand to certain types of love. So the broader point is love is not love. God is love. Sex is not love. So let me read from 1 John. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. There's the claim. God is love. In this, the love of God was made manifest among us, that God sent his only Son into the world, so that we might live through him. In this is love. Not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. So, this whole love thing, the golden rule, treat your neighbors yourself, but really it's driven by because they're made in the image of God, right? There's so much here. And we talked about Marxism and how Marx was trying to get to the conclusion of this utopian society by force, by imposing selflessness on people, making them selfless by force. Whereas the truth is the only way you change people is love. And how much more loving can the situation that the Bible present be? God sent his Son to be crucified, killed, ridiculed, mocked, beaten for payment for our sin. Whether, again, you believe it to be true or not, and you've looked at the evidence, and I mean, we'll go through maybe an episode where we'll go through the evidence, but whether or not it's true, do you see the logic of it? That's all I'm trying to get across, the logic of it. So the last bullet point is truth is not relative. So God is truth. That's the claim of the Bible as well. God is truth. Just think about it, like what entity would be behind saying there's no such thing as truth? If you confuse and demoralize the people so much that nothing's true anymore, you're really trying to avoid them from seeing God, if God is truth, right? You see the logic there? So I think there's a spiritual element in all these things. I mean, there's a religion, there's an atheistic religion. And again, the arrangement between the devil and God in the Bible is really the devil's desire is to get people to not think of God, worship God, know that they come from God, and make any other thing in their life God. Many, many gods out there. There's fake gods. There's gods we don't think of gods. Money is a god, or power, fame, leisure, popularity is your god. Whatever that master is that you think, if I just have this, if I just have enough of it, I'll have peace. I'll have all these things. Well, I mean, I don't know. Let me know how it works out. No one ever gets enough of the fake God. I mean, that was my personal experience. The Gospel of John says that Jesus' claim is, I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So that's a truth claim, right? So is truth relative? Again, if someone says there's no such thing as truth, ask them, is that statement true? And it all falls apart. There is such a thing as truth, and we got to evaluate truth. And it doesn't mean everything someone says is true, but look at what they say and reason through it and see if it's true. So that last bullet point of truth is not relative, it's really, again, it's a laziness, it's an incoherency, it's moronic to say there's no such thing as truth. It doesn't allow us to think, to talk, to reason, to do all the things that we need to do, that I'm encouraging people to do. And so challenge that when you hear someone say that. It's just a cop-out. It's just a way to avoid a thoughtful conversation on these issues, which we need to have. So I'm hoping going through this sign and presenting my ideas for a sign, unpacking these a little bit, I hope it opens up the stage for you to have a conversation with people when these things come up and talk about them. Not in an abusive way or combative way, but in a thoughtful way. And start really reasoning about why we're here. Questions that matter. Meaning of life. Not the bears, not the weather. Thanks for joining us for another episode. I hope I got you thinking and out of your comfort zone. Believe me, the biggest fear your government has is a population that is thinking and talking to one another. So get out there, take a risk, start a conversation, make a friend, and reason with each other. Share the show with someone who you think needs to hear it. I wish you peace and love.